He trusted her completely until one accidental glance at her phone destroyed everything he thought was real. Some secrets don't stay buried. They wait. They hide in plain sight in a saved contact, a deleted thread, a screen that lights up at a M, and when the truth finally surfaces, it doesn't whisper, it detonates. This is a story about love, betrayal, and the moment a man realized that the woman he built his entire world around had been living a double life. Stay until the end because the final revelation will change how you see everything that came before it. Chapter 1: The Perfect Life Nobody Questioned. Marcus Ellison was the kind of man who made everything look easy. At 34, he had the career, the apartment with the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the girlfriend that his friends called way out of your league every chance they got. He never argued with them, because honestly, he agreed. Simone Carter had walked into his life 2 years ago at a rooftop fundraiser, wearing a red dress and a smile that felt like a dare. She was a pediatric nurse, compassionate, organized, the type of woman who remembered everyone's coffee order and showed up early to everything. She was, by every observable measure, good. And Marcus loved her the way quiet men love, completely, without announcement. Their apartment was hers in spirit. Though his name was on the lease, she had painted the accent wall in the living room a deep olive green. She had picked the throw pillows, the kitchen curtains, the succulent on the windowsill she named Gerald. Marcus had let her build their home because watching her build things made him happy. That was just who he was. He worked long hours as a civil engineer, designing load-bearing structures for buildings that needed to last decades. He understood tension. He understood pressure points. He understood that even the most solid-looking thing could collapse if the foundation was wrong. He just never thought to apply that knowledge to his own life. On a Tuesday morning in March, Marcus woke up before his alarm. The bedroom was still dark, the city outside just beginning to hum. Simone was asleep beside him, her breathing slow and even, her dark hair fan across the pillow. He reached for his phone on the nightstand. He grabbed hers by mistake. He noticed immediately the rose gold case, the small chip on the bottom left corner she kept saying she'd fix. He moved to put it back. That was it. That was all he meant to do. But the screen lit up. A notification. A name he didn't recognize. And 4 words in the preview that stopped his blood cold. Last night was everything. Marcus sat completely still. The room hadn't changed. Simone's breathing hadn't changed. Gerald the succulent still sat on the windowsill, but something had shifted. Some invisible axis had tilted, and Marcus Ellison would spend the next 72 hours discovering exactly how far the ground had moved beneath his feet. He set the phone down carefully, lay back against the pillow, and stared at the ceiling until the alarm went off. Chapter 2: The Men Behind the Smile. Marcus went through the motions of that morning like a man walking through water. He showered. He dressed. He poured 2 cups of coffee the way he always did, black for him, oat milk and 1 sugar for Simone. He set hers on the nightstand beside her phone and watched her sleep for exactly 3 seconds before turning away. He told himself it was nothing. A patient, maybe. Simone worked long shifts. Patients became attached. Families sent thank you messages at odd hours. It happened. He had seen it happen. There was a perfectly reasonable explanation sitting just on the other side of that notification, and the mature thing, the trusting thing, was to leave it there unopened and go to work. So that is exactly what Marcus told himself as he sat in his car in the parking garage for 22 minutes without starting the engine. His phone buzzed. A text from his best friend, Dre. Still on for Thursday? Keisha's making jerk chicken. Marcus stared at the message, typed back a thumbs up, put the phone face down on the passenger seat. He and Dre had been friends since college. Andre Williams was the kind of man who filled every room he entered. Loud laugh, louder opinions, the first one on the dance floor and the last one to leave any argument. He was also the most perceptive person Marcus had ever known, which was exactly why Marcus had not called him yet. Because Dre would ask questions, and Marcus didn't have answers. He only had 4 words and a name he didn't recognize: Callum, sitting in his chest like a splinter too deep to reach. At the office, his colleague Bria noticed first. "You look terrible," she said, leaning against his doorframe with a coffee mug that read "Engineers do it with precision." "Good morning to you too. Seriously? You okay? Didn't sleep well." She studied him a moment longer than was comfortable. Bria had known Marcus for 3 years. They had worked side by side through 2 major infrastructure projects and one catastrophic deadline. She could read his silences almost as well as Drake could. "Simone okay?" she asked. The name landed differently than it should have. "She's fine," Marcus said. "Everything's fine." Bria nodded slowly, the way people nod when they don't believe you but respect you enough not to push. She disappeared back into the hallway. Marcus opened his laptop, closed it, opened it again. He spent the first 2 hours of his workday reconstructing the last 6 months in his head, not obsessively, he told himself, just logically. The late shifts, the new gym routine she had started in January, the weekend last November she had visited her sister in Atlanta, the trip she had mentioned exactly once and never brought up again. Small things, individually meaningless. The kind of details that only become a pattern when you already suspect there is one. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Simone. "Morning, love. Forgot to kiss you goodbye. That's a crime. Dinner tonight? I'll cook." Marcus read it twice, felt something complicated move through him, tenderness and suspicion arriving at the exact same moment, tangled so tightly together he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. He typed back, "Sure. Sounds good." Then he opened his browser and typed a single name, Callum, and what he found made him push his chair back slowly from the desk. Chapter 3: What the Search Returned. The name wasn't hard to find. Callum Reed, 37, fitness coach with a polished Instagram page, a logo that looked professionally designed, and a bio that read, "Helping people become the strongest version of themselves." His profile was public. Of course it was. Men like Callum Reed wanted to be seen. Marcus scrolled slowly. The photos were exactly what he expected: gym shots, motivational captions, client transformation posts. Callum was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of effortless confidence that photographed well. He had over 12,000 followers. He posted 3 times a week, always with a caption that sounded deep but said very little. Nothing on the page connected him to Simone. Not visibly. Not obviously. But Marcus was an engineer. He didn't look for what was visible. He looked for what was load-bearing. He scrolled back for months and found it: a post from November. A charity 5,000 in the city. The caption tagged 12 participants. One of the tagged accounts belonged to a profile called Simone C. Carter. Marcus clicked it. Her account was private. He knew that he followed her. Had followed her since their third date, when she had laughed and said, "Don't judge my food photos." But from the outside, from the view of someone who didn't follow her, there was only a profile picture and a follower count. He went back to Callum's page, found 2 more posts from November and December. Both tagged her account again: group fitness events, public gatherings. Nothing that meant anything on its own. Marcus closed the browser. He sat with his hands flat on the desk and breathed. This was not evidence of anything. A notification at an odd hour. A name and a tag. A message preview with 4 words that could mean 100 different things. He was a reasonable man. He dealt in facts and load calculations, not assumptions. He called Simone on his lunch break. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and slightly breathless, like she had just come up a flight of stairs. "Hey you, miss me already?" "Just checking in," Marcus said. "How's your shift?" "Crazy. We had a little boy come in this morning. Couldn't have been more than 5 anyway. He's okay now. But it was touch and go for a minute. I hate those ones." She exhaled. "How's your day?" "Fine. Same as always." "You sound weird. Tired." A pause. Brief but present. "You sure that's all?" Marcus looked at the wall across from his desk, a framed blueprint of a bridge he had worked on 3 years ago. He had spent 11 months on that project, stress testing every joint, every beam, every connection point, because the cost of being wrong was too high. "Yeah," he said, "that's all." "Okay." Her voice softened. "I'm making pasta tonight. The baked kind you like. Go drink some water, baby." After she hung up, Marcus sat without moving for a long moment. Then he did something he had never done before in 2 years of being with Simone Carter. He drove to the hospital on his lunch break, parked across the street, and waited to see if she was actually there. She was. He saw her through the glass entrance, laughing with a colleague, still in her scrubs. He felt ashamed immediately, started the car, began to pull out. And then a silver SUV parked 2 spaces from the entrance. The driver got out, tall, broad-shouldered. Marcus stopped the car. Callum Reed walked through those hospital doors like he had been there before. Chapter 4: The Rules of a Crumbling World. Marcus did not go inside. He sat in that car for 11 minutes. He knew because he watched the clock the way a man watches something he cannot look away from. And when Callum Reed finally walked back out through those glass doors, he was alone. No Simone. No conversation visible through the windows, just a man who had entered a hospital and left one. The way people do every day for 1,000 ordinary reasons. Marcus drove back to work. He did not tell Dre. He did not tell Bria. He ate half a sandwich at his desk, stared at a structural report he had already read 4 times, and made a decision that felt reasonable in the moment the way most destructive decisions do. He would watch quietly, carefully. Like an engineer assessing a structure before committing to a conclusion, he would gather information. He would not accuse. He would not confront. He would simply pay attention to the details he had apparently been too comfortable to notice before. That evening, dinner was almost unbearably normal. Simone had set the table properly, with the cloth napkins she only used when she wanted things to feel intentional. The baked pasta was perfect. There was a candle. There was soft music coming from the small speaker on the kitchen counter. She talked about her patients, about a co-worker's engagement, about a documentary she wanted them to watch on Friday. Marcus listened, laughed in the right places, refilled her water without being asked, because that was what he always did. At one point she reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. "I feel like we haven't really talked in a while," she said. "Like actually talked. Are we okay?" Marcus looked at her, at the soft concern in her eyes, genuine and warm and directed entirely at him. "We're good," he said. "Just work stress. You know how March gets." She squeezed his hand. "Tell me about it." "I'm here." He nodded and changed the subject. Later, while she washed dishes and he dried, he noticed her phone on the counter. Face down. She had placed it face down, which she didn't always do, which meant nothing, which meant everything, which meant he was losing his grip on what was real. 2 days passed. On Thursday, he went to Dre and Keisha's for dinner as planned. Keisha's jerk chicken was extraordinary as always, and their 2 kids ages 6 and 4 ran circles around the adults until Keisha sent them upstairs with a look that required no words. Dre leaned back in his chair and studied Marcus over his drink. "Talk," Dre said. "About what?" "Whatever it is that's been eating you since Tuesday. Don't insult me." Keisha quietly excused herself to check on the kids. Marcus turned his glass slowly on the table. Then, in careful, measured sentences, he told Dre about the notification, the name, the Instagram search, the hospital. Dre listened without interrupting, which was unusual enough that it made the weight of the story feel heavier. When Marcus finished, the kitchen was very quiet. "You looked up this Callum dude?" Dre asked. "Yes." "And you went to the hospital to see if she was actually there?" "Yes." Dre set down his glass. "Marcus' brother." He paused. "That woman's phone is the only thing that has the real answers, and you already had it once." Marcus shook his head. "I'm not going through her phone." "I know," Dre said quietly. "That's what scares me." Marcus drove home at 10. Simone was already in bed reading. She smiled when he walked in, patted his side of the bed. He changed, climbed in, and lay in the dark listening to her breathing slow into sleep. At 1:47 a.m., her phone lit up on the nightstand. He saw the name before the screen went dark. Callum. Chapter 5: The night everything cracked open. Marcus did not touch the phone. Not at 1:47. Not at 2. Not at 2:30. When he finally stopped pretending he was going to sleep and moved quietly to the living room, sitting on the couch in the dark with his hands clasped between his knees like a man in a waiting room who already knows the diagnosis. He thought about the bridge, the one framed on his office wall. He had spent 11 months on that project because a bridge is not just steel and concrete, it is trust. Every person who drives across it trusts, without thinking, that the people who built it did not miss anything, did not cut corners, did not look away from the data because the data was uncomfortable. He had looked away, not dramatically, not all at once, just gradually, the way people let small doubts dissolve into comfort because comfort is easier than truth. By he had made his decision. He was not proud of it. He would not pretend it was noble, but he was done being the only person in this relationship operating without full information. Simone's passcode was her mother's birthday. He knew it because she had used it in front of him dozens of times, trusted him with it the way people trust someone when they believe they have nothing to hide. He waited until he could hear her breathing steady and deep from the bedroom. Then he picked up her phone. The messages thread with Callum Reed loaded slowly, the way terrible things always seem to, as if even the technology understands that some information cannot be unseen. Marcus read in silence. He read for 6 minutes. He knew because he checked the time when he started and again when he put the phone down, because some part of his brain was still functioning like an engineer, still documenting, still time-stomping, even while the rest of him was coming apart. The messages went back for months. They were not ambiguous. They were not professional. They were not the messages of a fitness coach and a client, or two friends, or two colleagues who had met at a charity 5,000 and kept in touch. They were the messages of two people in the middle of something deliberate and ongoing, coordinates for meetings, inside references to things Marcus had never been told, and photographs not explicit, but unmistakable. Simone laughing in a restaurant Marcus had never taken her to, Simone in a car he didn't recognize, head to back, completely at ease. The last message, sent at 1:47 that morning, was from Callum. I know this is getting complicated, but I'm not ready to stop. Are you? Simone had not replied yet. Marcus set the phone down on the coffee table, faced up this time. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked around the living room, the olive green accent wall, the throw pillows, Gerald on the windowsill, and felt the specific, terrible sensation of a world that looks identical to the one that existed an hour ago but is not, in any way that matters, the same place. He heard the bedroom door open. Simone appeared in the hallway, squinting in the low light, hair loose, wearing his old university sweatshirt. Marcus. Her voice was soft with sleep. What are you doing up? He looked at her. She looked at the phone on the coffee table. The silence that followed lasted only for seconds. But inside those 4 seconds, something passed between them, a current, a recognition, and Marcus watched the exact moment Simone understood that the version of her life where Marcus didn't know was officially over. Sit down, Marcus said quietly. It was not a request. Chapter 6: The confession that broke both of them. Simone sat, not on the couch beside him. She chose the armchair across the room, and Marcus noticed that too. The way she instinctively created distance, the way the body reveals what the mouth hasn't said yet. She pulled the sleeves of his sweatshirt over her hands, a habit she had when she was nervous. He had always found it endearing. Now it just made him tired. How much did you read? She asked. Enough. She nodded slowly, looked at the floor, then back at him. Marcus, don't. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm, even to himself. Don't start with my name like that. Just talk to me. She breathed in, held it, let it go. It started in November, she said. The 5,000. We got talking after and it wasn't supposed to become anything. I want you to know that. It wasn't planned. Things like this never are, Marcus said. That's what people say. She flinched slightly. I know how it sounds. How long? For months. The number landed clean and hard, like something dropped from a height. 4 months. 16 weeks. 112 days during which Marcus had eaten dinner across from her, slept beside her, refilled her water glass, and called her on lunch breaks just to hear her voice. Did you? He stopped, reorganized. Were you going to tell me? The pause before her answer was exactly 1 second too long. I don't know, she said, and then, quieter, I think I was trying to end it. Trying. Yes. His message tonight asked if you were ready to stop. Marcus kept his eyes on her face. You hadn't answered. Simone looked away. The streetlight outside pushed a thin line of gold through the curtain gap and landed across the floor between them like a border neither could cross. I'm not a perfect person, she said finally. I never asked you to be. I know. Her voice broke on the second word. Just slightly. A hairline fracture. I know you didn't. That's the part that makes this. She pressed her lips together. That makes this so hard to explain. Then don't explain it, Marcus said. Just tell me the truth. All of it. Right now. What followed was 20 minutes that Marcus would spend a long time trying to forget and never quite managed to. She talked. He listened. She told him about the slow creep of it, how Callum had made her feel seen in a specific way she couldn't articulate cleanly, how she had told herself it was harmless until it wasn't, how every time she had decided to end it something pulled her back. She was not cruel about it. She did not minimize Marcus or compare him to Callum in ways designed to wound. She was honest in the way people are when they are finally too exhausted to be anything else. At one point she cried. Marcus handed her a tissue from the box on the side table, because that was simply who he was even now. Even here, his instinct was to take care of her, and the realization of that hit him somewhere deep and unamiable. When she finished, the apartment was very quiet. Do you love him? Marcus asked. Simone looked at him with red-rimmed eyes, and in that moment Marcus understood that the most devastating answers are not always yes or no. Sometimes they are. I don't know. He stood up slowly, walked to the bedroom, took a pillow and a blanket from the closet. I need you to sleep out here tonight, he said. She didn't argue. He closed the bedroom door, sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, and for the first time since Tuesday morning, Marcus Ellison put his face in his hands and let himself feel the full, crushing weight of what had just collapsed. Chapter 7. The things Dre knew first. Marcus did not sleep. He lay on top of the covers fully dressed, staring at the ceiling until the room shifted from black to gray to the pale, indifferent blue of early morning. At 6:15 he heard Simone moving quietly in the living room, the soft sound of the bathroom door, the kettle clicking on, the careful footsteps of a woman trying not to take up too much space. At 6:40 he heard the front door close. He waited 5 minutes, then he called Dre. It rang twice before Dre picked up, voice rough with sleep. Marcus? It's not even 7. She's been seeing someone for months. Silence. Then, I'm coming over. You don't have to. Marcus. Dre's voice was quiet and final. I'm coming over. He arrived 40 minutes later with 2 coffees from the place on Meridian that Marcus liked and the expression of a man who had already grieved on the drive over so he could be steady when it counted. He sat across from Marcus at the kitchen table and listened without interrupting while Marcus laid out everything: the phone, the messages, the photographs, the conversation at AM, the way Simone had said I don't know when he asked if she loved Callum. When Marcus finished, Dre wrapped both hands around his coffee cup and looked at the table for a long moment. I have to tell you something, Dre said. Marcus looked at him. And I need you to hear me out before you react. The air in the kitchen changed. Dre, I saw her. He said it carefully, like a man placing something fragile on an unstable surface. Back in December, at the Westfield parking garage, she was with a man I didn't recognize. It wasn't nothing, Marcus. The way they were standing, the way she looked when she saw me. He paused. She asked me not to say anything. Said it was complicated and she was handling it and she didn't want to hurt you. Marcus set down his coffee. You knew. The words came out low and measured. Since December, I didn't know. I suspected. There's a difference. Dre, I know. His voice held something that looked like shame. I should have told you. I've been fighting with myself about it for 3 months, every Thursday dinner. Every text, I almost said something 100 times. He met Marcus's eyes directly, the way men do when they're not asking for forgiveness but they're not hiding either. I told myself it wasn't my place, that she deserved a chance to come clean. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. Marcus stood up from the table, walked to the window, looked down at the street below where the city was already moving, already busy, already completely indifferent to the fact that his life had been rearranged overnight. 3 months. Dre had carried this for 3 months. Simone had carried it for 4. And Marcus had carried nothing, had walked around completely unburdened by a truth that apparently everyone in his orbit had been quietly negotiating around him. "How did you not tell me?" Marcus asked, not angry, just genuinely unable to understand. "Because you love her," Dre said simply, "and I watched you build something with her that looked real, and I didn't want to be the person who knocked it down if there was a chance she was going to fix it herself." Marcus turned from the window. "She didn't fix it." "No," Dre said quietly. "She didn't." They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that old friendships can hold without collapsing under the weight. Then Dre said, "What do you need right now?" Marcus thought about it seriously, the way he thought about everything methodically, structurally, looking for the load-bearing answer beneath the surface of the question. "I need to talk to Callum Reed," he said. Dre looked at him carefully. "Why?" "Because Simone gave me her version, and there's something in those messages that didn't add up." Marcus picked up his phone from the table. "Something she didn't explain. Something I don't think she even knows I noticed." Dre leaned forward slowly. "What are you talking about?" Marcus turned the phone around so Dre could see the screenshot he had taken at M. Dre read it again. His eyes came up slowly. "Marcus," he said carefully, "if this means what I think it means, then Simone isn't the only one who's been lying." Chapter 8: The Confrontation That Changed Everything. Marcus found Callum Reed the way he found most things, methodically. The Instagram page listed a gym, Elevate Fitness, on the corner of Broad and 11th. Marcus arrived at M on a Saturday, wearing a plain jacket and the particular expression of a man who has already decided that whatever happens next, he will not flinch from it. The gym was mid-sized, clean, smelling of rubber and effort. A young woman at the front desk smiled and asked if he wanted a trial membership. Marcus said he was there to see Callum Reed, personal matter. The young woman's smile flickered briefly, the kind of flicker that suggested she had witnessed personal matters arrive at this front desk before, and she pointed toward the back. Callum was with a client. Marcus waited 7 minutes by the water fountain, watching through the glass partition as Callum spotted weights and offered corrections with the easy authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. When the session ended, Callum came through the partition door and stopped. He recognized Marcus immediately, which meant Simone had shown him photographs, which meant this had been real enough, significant enough, that she had shared pieces of Marcus's life with this man. That detail cost Marcus something small and irreplaceable. "Marcus," Callum said, cautious, not aggressive, "I think you know why I'm here." Callum looked around the gym briefly. "We should talk somewhere private." They moved to a small office near the back. Callum closed the door. He did not sit, neither did Marcus. They stood on opposite sides of a cluttered desk like two men who understood that this conversation had weight and were both, in their own way, preparing to bear it. "I'm not here to threaten you," Marcus said. "I'm here because there's something in your messages to Simone that she couldn't explain. Maybe because she doesn't know. Maybe because you made sure she didn't." Callum's composure shifted, almost imperceptibly. But Marcus had spent his career reading structures under stress, and he saw the microscopic tightening around the eyes. "I don't know what you mean," Callum said. Marcus placed his phone on the desk. The screenshot. 3 messages, sent from Callum's number across 2 weeks in January, that Marcus had read 6 times between AM and dawn and could not reconcile with the rest of the thread. Callum looked at them, said nothing. "You knew her before the 5K, Marcus said. "These messages reference something that happened before November, a conversation about someone named Victor, a decision that was already made." He watched Callum's face carefully. "Simone doesn't mention Victor anywhere in her replies, which tells me she either doesn't know who Victor is, or she was kept deliberately in the dark about his involvement in whatever this actually is." The silence in that small office was substantial. "Who is Victor?" Marcus asked. Callum sat down slowly, rubbed a hand across his jaw. He looked, for the first time, less like a man in control of a situation and more like a man calculating how much truth the moment required. "Victor Ensa, Callum said finally. He's an investor. He approached me 8 months ago about a business deal, a new wellness facility. He needed a front-facing partner with a fitness profile. He needed someone credible. A pause. He also needed access to someone who worked at Riverside Memorial Hospital. Marcus went very still. Simone, Marcus said. Callum didn't recruit Simone for the reason you think. Callum said. His voice had changed quieter now, carrying something that might have been genuine regret. In the beginning, Victor wanted patient intake data. Nothing dramatic, demographic information he could use to target the wellness facility's location and services. He thought a relationship with someone inside the hospital would make that easier to obtain. You used her, Marcus said. I got close to her for that reason. Yes. Callum met his eyes. But that's not what it became. And I never asked her for anything. I couldn't. Because somewhere along the way he stopped. Started again. It stopped being about Victor. Marcus picked up his phone from the desk. His hand was steady. He was proud of that. Does Simone know any of this? He asked. No, Callum said quietly. She has no idea. Marcus looked at him for a long moment, at this man who had entered his relationship like a carefully placed fault line, who had been sent with a purpose and then complicated everything by becoming human in the middle of it. You're going to tell her, Marcus said, everything. Today, Marcus. And then you're going to tell me everything you know about Victor Ensa. Marcus buttoned his jacket with precise, deliberate movements, because if he was trying to use Simone to access patient data at that hospital, that is not a personal problem. That is a federal one. He opened the office door, turned back once. You thought this was a love story, Marcus said. It was never just a love story. He walked out through the gym, past the weights and the mirrors and the young woman at the front desk, and into the pale morning light, carrying something heavier than betrayal and something that felt unexpectedly like purpose. His phone buzzed as he reached his car. A message from Simone. Callum just called me. Marcus, what did you do? He typed back for words. What needed to be done? Chapter 9. What remains when the smoke clears? 3 months later, the city looked the same. Same streets. Same coffee shop on Meridian where Dre had bought 2 cups on the worst morning of Marcus's recent life. Same bridge on his office walls, same Gerald the succulent on the windowsill though. Gerald now lived on Marcus's desk at work, relocated during the quiet, careful process of dividing a shared life back into 2 separate ones. Some things once moved do not go back to where they were. Victor Ensa had been formally investigated within 2 weeks of Marcus walking out of Elevate Fitness that Saturday morning. The complaint had been filed carefully, with documentation, with the specific and methodical precision of a man who understood that structures only hold when every connection point is properly secured. Hospital administration had cooperated fully. So had Callum, who had provided everything: names, dates, communications, with the exhausted relief of someone who had been waiting for the weight to be lifted. Victor's operation had not yet reached Simone. Callum had been telling the truth about that. She had been a target, a door he intended to open but he had never knocked. Whether that was strategy or conscience, Marcus supposed he would never know for certain. It didn't change the outcome. It didn't change anything that had already happened between the 3 of them. But it changed something small and important in how Marcus understood the full shape of the story. He and Simone had one final conversation in April, not angry, not performative. Just 2 people sitting at the kitchen table, her kitchen table now, since Marcus had moved to a furnished apartment on the other side of the city, with cups of tea going cold between them, saying the true things that people rarely manage to say while they are still inside a relationship. She told him she was sorry, not the reflexive sorry of someone trying to minimize damage, but the considered sorry of someone who had sat with their own reflection for 3 months and not looked away from what they saw. He told her he believed her. He also told her that belief and reconciliation were not the same thing. She nodded. She understood. She asked if he hated her and he said no, said it clearly and without hesitation. Because it was true. And because Marcus Ellison had never seen the point in building structures designed to collapse. You deserve someone who doesn't make you feel like you have to check, she said quietly. So do you, he said. They sat with that for a while. When he left, She stood at the door of the apartment, the olive green wall visible behind her, the throw pillows, the life they had assembled together now reassembling itself around a different center, and Marcus raised one hand in a brief, honest goodbye. She raised hers back. He did not cry until he reached his car, and then he cried properly, with the kind of full-bodied grief that has nothing shameful in it, the grief of a man who had loved something real, even if it had been built on a foundation neither of them had inspected closely enough. Dre called that evening. "How do you feel?" he asked. Marcus thought about it seriously, the way he always did, like someone who just finished a very long project. He said, "Tired, but solid." Dre laughed softly. "That's the most engineer answer anyone has ever given to that question." Probably. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that only exists between people who have been through something real together and come out the other side still standing. "Keisha wants to know if you're coming Thursday," Dre said. "Tell her yes," Marcus said. "Tell her I'll bring the rice." He hung up and sat for a moment in the quiet of his new apartment, smaller than the last one. No accent wall. No throw pillows selected by someone who loved color more than he did, just clean lines, good light, and enough space to figure out who he was when he wasn't being defined by what someone else needed him to be. On the windowsill, Gerald the succulent sat in a patch of afternoon sun, unhurried and uncomplicated, doing exactly what it had always done, growing quietly, asking for very little, surviving everything. Marcus looked at it for a long moment. Then he opened his laptop, pulled up a new project file, and began to build something. And if this story made you feel something, if you have ever loved someone completely only to discover you were working with incomplete information, then you already know that the most important structure you will ever engineer is the one you rebuild after everything falls down. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you want more stories like this one, real, raw, and human, subscribe and hit the bell, because the next story is already waiting. And trust me, you're not ready for it.